Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom, and you can pre-order all of the Strixhaven cards you need right now by heading over to cardkingdom.com.
Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it is time for the video you've all been waiting for. I'm joined by Tomer today to talk about our top 10 cards from Strixhaven for the Commander format. Tomer, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Seth. I'm very hyped for this. Let's do it.
I am very hyped for this too. This is always one of my favorite videos when we get to talk about our favorite Commander cards. In this season, if you missed the C21 top 10 video, we got a bit of a twist. We're doing things a little bit differently. In the past, it was mostly Tomer's list of his 10 favorite cards we talked about. Well, this time, we're each getting in on the ranking action. So we have my top 5 cards and Tomer's top 5 cards. Add them together. That I think adds up to 10. So it's still a top 10, but with both of our input. And we got some really sweet cards to talk about. There's some ridiculous Commander stuff from this set. So Tomer, are you ready to count them down?
Ready, but one quick clarification for the people who are watching. This is not a power ranking guide. This is more of our personal hype guide. So this is our top 5 we are the most hyped for cards, and nothing to do with power level or, one card is better than the other objectively or anything like that. It's just what we're hyped for, what we're excited for the most, and nothing more, nothing less. So yeah. This is a clarification.
Yeah, this is the stuff we like, except for, well, my number 5 on the list. I do like it, but I also think it's really powerful, which is partly why I put it here. I actually have two cards featuring a new mechanic from Strixhaven, Magecraft, which triggers whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, while Professor Onyx's Magecraft ability drains each opponent for 2. They lose 2 life, you gain 2 life. Witherbloom Apprentice, kind of the same thing, except it only drains for 1. And these cards, because they trigger when you copy an instant or sorcery as well as cast it, opens up some combos. I know, Tomer, you made a video about one of them with Chain of Smog, where you essentially just win the game if you can resolve either of these cards into Chain of Smog, targeting yourself an infinite number of times. And I think that that's actually pretty scary. Like, you're already in black, and black has the best tutors, so you can easily find your pieces. Professor Onyx, like, it's great, but it is 6 mana. Witherbloom Apprentice, it's only 2 mana. It seems pretty practical with fast mana to maybe go infinite on like turn 3 with this combo. Like, you can easily do it on turn 3 if you just have both cards in hand, but even like turn 1 Vampiric Tutor up one of your combo pieces, turn 2 play one of them, turn 3 combo off, win the game. Like, that seems like something that could actually be really frightening and almost like too good for some Commander decks. I don't know. What do you think about this easy 2-card win the game combo, Tomer?
I think it could even be like turn 2, right? Like if you have a Dark Ritual, you could just be like Vampiric Tutor, find one of the pieces, turn 2, pay 1 green.
Yeah.
And then pay 1 black, Dark Ritual, now you're up 2 mana. Oh, no, yeah, it's still turn 3, I guess, right? Still turn 3. But, I mean, turn 3 combos.
I mean, I guess if you have a bunch of Lotus Petals and
Yeah.
Moxen and stuff like that, you could do it turn 2.
Yeah, if you have any other sorts of early ramp too, then you can win pretty darn fast. I think it's a bit much with Chain of Smog, but I feel like the mechanic itself, Magecraft, is fine. I just think that, it's just so happened that Chain of Smog works really weird. Like, I think if it was made in like 2021, it would probably say like, you can only copy this spell, or you could only target a person who has cards in hand or something like that, something weird like that. I don't know, or it would probably just not be made.
Target opponent.
Yeah, it would be target opponent.
Target opponent.
Yeah, target
discards
opponent.
the cards. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, definitely target opponent.
I think my concern with it is I feel like Magecraft is a really cool mechanic, and I want people to build Magecraft decks. Like, I think it's going to be really fun, and you can definitely play these fairly. Like, you can play your Professor Onyx and, cast some spells and maintain your life total, drain your opponents, or try to like pseudo storm off, chaining together your Dark Rituals and so forth. But the Chain of Smog combo, why wouldn't you put that in your deck if you're playing these cards? So I feel like it's going to end up being this like oops, I win thing, essentially, where maybe you're playing like a fair Magecraft deck with these cards. It's going to be so tempting to include Chain of Smog and so like wrong, I guess, to not play Chain of Smog, that I feel like you're going to have games that just accidentally end. But definitely worth noting, I think, and worth being on a top 5 list, just because I expect that a lot of decks are going to try to take advantage of this, because it is maybe the most hyped and most talked about new combo to come out of Strixhaven.
I mean, I'm definitely putting Professor Onyx and Chain of Smog into my Toshiro Mazawa deck, but at the same time, I'm going to have a card in my sideboard, basically, like inside the deck box, where if I'm playing at a table that is a little bit less powerful and I still want to play that deck, you know, I can just swap out Chain of Smog. I can keep in Professor Onyx because I think it's still a fair card by itself. But if I don't want the combo, I could just take out Chain of Smog, put in like a swamp, you know, doesn't matter, and it'll be fine. So
do you have a replacement decided on yet?
I don't know.
Do you think it'll just be a basic land?
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good like deck building technique that I hadn't thought about, having your deck be designed, because I feel like Professor Onyx, Witherbloom Apprentice, they're fine cards, and you can definitely play medium or even low power Magecraft decks with them. It's that one combo that overpowers them. So I think that's actually a really cool way that you can build this deck and still have it be good for many different play groups, many different power levels. That's a good deck building technique. I hadn't really thought of that.
Yeah, and also if it makes you feel any better, I'm sure there's going to be a time where I'm going to Chain of Smog myself, go down to 0 cards, and the moment I go down to 0 cards, somebody's going to counter my Chain of Smog. You know, you just lost your entire hand. It'll feel real bad, but it'll also be amazing. You know, so
I mean, I guess
that could happen too.
Yeah, I guess they could also kill like the Witherbloom Apprentice or Professor Onyx, right? So removal would potentially interact with it too after a few after you empty your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, you wait until they empty their hand first. They go from like 7 cards to 0, and then you just blow up one of their pieces or you counter their spell and they just cry inside. And then you kill them, of course, obviously, for that travesty. But like, yeah, that'll be pretty funny. Yeah.
All right, Let's move on. Tomer's number 4 card. We're staying with black and green cards. Belladrose, Witherbloom, Elder Dragon number 1. Tomer, why don't you tell us what this one does and what you're excited about?
All right, so this is a 7 mana Witherbloom / Golgari Elder Dragon. It's a 4/4 with flying, so it's not a huge beater or anything for its mana cost. But it has 2 very powerful abilities. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. And it has another ability, pay 10 life, untap all lanes you control, activate only once each turn. So both of these abilities are pretty powerful. The first one is basically a Verdant Force effect, where Verdant Force basically just has this ability, except instead of making pest creatures, you're making plant tokens, so they're a little bit worse. You don't get to gain life when they're sacrificed. The second ability is like this insane ramp engine, where you get to untap all your lands by paying 10 life. I mean, you start at 40, so you could already pay that chunk pretty easily. And, you know, if you sacrifice some pests, you can get that life gain back anyway. So untapping all lands you control essentially allows you to cast either cast a lot more spells in one single turn. You can, like, you know, spend all your mana, tap all your lands, spend all your mana to cast a bunch of spells, untap all your lands, then cast a bunch more spells or activate more abilities or whatever. So you can have really explosive turns. Or what you could do is you could tap all your lands, float that mana, activate Belladrose's ability to untap all your lands, tap all those lands again, and then cast a giant spell with it. So let's say you have like 10 mana, 10 lands on the battlefield. You can tap all lands, float 10 mana, untap them all with Belladrose, tap them all again. You can cast a 20 mana spell, something like Torment of Hailfire for X = 18. Very easy way to win the game. So both those abilities combined in a single card makes us very, very powerful as a finisher or just a value engine in any regard. And the 7 mana isn't really a big deal too, I don't think. You're in green, so you can just ramp it out. Or you're in black, you could like entomb this, put it into your graveyard, then reanimate it, lose 7 life, but you basically got this card onto the battlefield for 1 mana with reanimate, or, you know, animate dead for 2 mana, and you don't lose life. So I think this card is pretty busted, and it's going to show up in a lot of like Witherbloom, Golgari, graveyard style decks, or just like a value engine in general in any Golgari deck, really. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this card is good enough to see play in a lot of decks. The untap land ability, I think, is a big one. That can do some really powerful things. We've seen consistently over the past couple of years that doubling up your mana is really powerful. 10 life might sound like a lot, but we're playing Commander. You got 40 life to start with, plus you can use the double mana, as Tomer was talking about, to cast really big spells like maybe Exsanguinate or other massive life gain spells that you have access to in these colors. So it seems pretty easy, if you're going to play this as your Commander, to build around it in a way where you can be untapping your lands at least on your turn every turn. Maybe you can't gain enough life to do it everyone's turn every turn, but to do it on your turn, I think that's very practical. And using this to cast big Genesis waves, Exsanguinates, Torment and Hailfire seems really busted. And I'm always surprised how many decks play things like Verdant Force or like Tendershoot Dryad. People like their like token producers. I guess you're losing out on some of the like Saproling synergies, and pests don't have a ton going for them at this point, but the incidental life gain is nice. Just gaining back a little bit of life as your pests die to then pay more life to untap your lands. So yeah, seems like a great reanimation target. Seems like a fun Commander. Just all around really, really powerful, mostly because of that untap all your land ability, which, oh my goodness, that is so strong.
Yeah, even if you don't even have life gain in the deck, it doesn't really matter if you're paying 10 life and it's like a significant portion of your life total if you're casting a game-winning spell. Like if you just resolve the Torment of Hailfire for 18 or whatever, it doesn't matter that you're at 10 life now, you win. So there's also that. I think this card is pretty busted.
Or maybe, yeah, can turn on your Death Shadows.
Yeah, Death Shadows is Commander. Maybe modern against odds.
Let's move on to our first number 4 card, and we have a MDFC here, Jazzy, Oracle of Arcavos, and Journey to the Oracle. And Journey to the Oracle, sure, whatever. 4 mana, you can put any number of lands from your hand on the battlefield. That's cute. The thing I'm excited about with Jazzy is the front side. A 8 mana 5/5 legendary human wizard. You can discard a card to bounce it back to your hand. More importantly, it has a Magecraft ability that says when you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land, you can cast it by paying 1 generic mana rather than paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. So I think that Jazzy is going to be a really popular Simic commander. We've seen recently stuff like Tetyova be very powerful, or Asai be very powerful, because when you think of Simic decks, what they normally want to do is cast a ton of Cultivates and Kadama's Reaches and Rampant Growths and all these ramp spells. Those are the cards you want to be playing in your green decks anyway. All those cards ramp you into Jazzy, just like they ramp you into Asai or Tetyova. And then once you have your commander out and it's in the late game and you normally don't really care too much about a Rampant Growth, there are also ways that trigger your Jazzy to spin into massive, powerful, whatever, any big spells you want to, even if you're just spinning into little spells. And then the way it's worded, it triggers itself. So once you cast the first spell, if you hit another spell, you can pay 1 and play that spell and pay 1 and play that spell and just keep it going. The backside, I think it's way worse than people think it is. I've heard people saying, oh, it's a ramp spell. This is going to wrap me into Jazzy. No, I don't think it's going to work like that, because by the time you cast it, you're probably not going to have that many lands left in hand. On the other hand, if you're casting a big Blue Sun Zenith or some mass card draw spell, or imagine Enter the Infinite, where you're drawing your entire deck, if you can then play this and put all your lands into play, it's going to be absolutely absurd in those scenarios. I've definitely had times where I like cast a huge Blue Sun Zenith, draw a ton of cards on the person before me's end step, but then the pinch is usually mana. You're like, oh, I got all these lands, I got all these cards, but I can't cast them all this turn. This is a way for 4 mana. You can potentially like ritual yourself by putting all those lands into play and then do all your sweet other stuff. So I love this card. It is just the dirtliest, valuiest ramp finisher. But Tomer, what do you think about Jazzy?
I agree with you on that. I think this card is pretty insane. I think like Journey to the Oracle is kind of like you said, it's more like a Summer Bloom effect that costs 4 mana, which I don't think is bad in some decks. But yeah, it's good off a Blue Sun Zenith, but really though, I think the reason why Journey to the Oracle, I look at it and I'm like, this card is actually really strong, is because it plays so well with the 2 other Simics you said, Tatyova and AC. Like, Tatyova and AC draw a stupid amount of cards when you're ramping. Like, all you want to do with Tatyova and AC is like crack fetch lands, cast your Rampant Growths, cast your Cultivates, all that stuff, and you're just rewarded with absurd amounts of cards in hand. And then then you cast Journey to the Oracle. Once you have an absurd amount of cards, you drop 5 more lands onto the battlefield, and then you draw 5 more cards. Now you're full again, and you return it back to your hand. And then you can cast it on the Jazzy side. You cast the Jazzy side, you go off with the Magecraft, and like you said, the Magecraft ability, if you're casting instants or sorceries off the top of it, it chains off the top of it. You whiff when you hit lands, but I mean, whatever. Then you just, cast another instant or sorcery from your hand, because if you put a land onto the battlefield and you have like Tatyova and AC, you're just drawing more cards. You're going to have more instant or sorceries to cast in your hand. Oh, and those lands are untapped too, so you just immediately use those mana to pay for that other cost, the Magecraft cost. So it's kind of insane. I think this card, to me, I find a little bit boring. I don't know. It's just basically, I feel like Jazzy, it has too much overlap between AC and Tatyova. Like, I feel like you take an AC or Tatyova deck and you literally just rearrange what's the commander for this deck. Am I feeling like Tatyova today? Am I feeling like AC today? Am I feeling like Jazzy today? And they just all merge together in like this Simic landfall, draw cards, put lands on the battlefield, win the game incidentally. So I'm not really hyped for it. I feel like yeah, I get it. Like, I like drawing cards. I like making mana. Like, I like those 2 things. I'm a big Dirtle aficionado, but I feel like it's almost too easy. So that's my gripe on it. I don't know. I like the Jazzy a little bit more Magecrafty than Tatyova and AC. So maybe you can put like a little bit more of like instant spells matter if you're a commander. But I feel like it's just all the same. It's all just play lands, draw cards, play lands, draw cards, make a lot of mana, draw a lot of cards. Oops, I have 10 cards in my library left. I guess I'll win the game now. And I'm just bored of it. I'm bored. It's too easy, Seth.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
That play pattern never gets boring for me. That's
it's
how
so
I want
easy
all of
though.
my
You don't have to
Commander
work
games
for
to go.
it. It's like, oh, I play green ramp spells that I'm going to be doing anyway, and I draw cards for it, and then I'll play more ramp spells that I'm going to do. Like, oh man, just at least I don't know. At least jump through a hoop. I don't get it.
I will say, I think this is probably not as good as Tatyova. I think it's probably less good than them, so hopefully that's okay. I think having one that's better than Tatyova would probably be really problematic. This, to me, like, sure, it does go in the exact same deck. You're going to play the exact same cards for the most part. I guess you can add in some more big spells, maybe, if you want to build around Jazzy. But really, I don't know. I think it looks really fun. Sure, it's not really innovative, but I think it looks like the card from Strixhaven that I would most like to untap with in a game of Commander, because that turn is going to be really sweet.
And the upside is, even if they try to stop you, you're just like, oh, I discard a card because I drew 20 cards, so whatever. I didn't have a free counter spell this turn. No. I'll just recast Jets.
Yeah, seems easy to protect it, and then that also gets around the commander tax, which is relevant on an 8-mana commander. Yeah, even in a ramp deck, if it dies too much, it would get a little bit pricey to recast. So yeah, I like it, but let's see what Tomer has number 4 on his list. Oh, I like this one too. Hoffrey Ghost Forge, a new Boros / Lorehold commander. What's this one do, Tomer?
All right, so this is a 5-mana Boros / Lorehold 4/5 legendary creature, dwarf cleric. It says spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, you create a token that's a copy of that creature, except that it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. So this is definitely like a Boros Aristocrats style deck, a Boros Sacrifice style deck that is kind of like a cool, unique design space that also merges, some spirit support. So the idea is that you play a creature, you sacrifice the creature, it gets exiled, and you get a token of it. And the token's actually better than the original creature because of the spirit, and hopefully also gives spirits +1/+1 trample and haste, so you can immediately tap it to use tap abilities or attack and deal damage. And then when that spirit dies, it goes, the original creature goes from the exile zone to the graveyard, so you can reanimate it or do all those great things. So this is definitely, I think, like a sacrifice style deck, or a bunch of cards that you want to be sacrificed for value in some sort of way, or sacrifice themselves for value. Like I can imagine like playing a Selfless Spirit, for example, and you can sacrifice the Selfless Spirit to make your entire creature board indestructible, and then it gets exiled, and you get a spirit token version of it. And then you can sacrifice it again to make your stuff indestructible, and then it's in the graveyard, and maybe you reanimate it with a Sun Titan, and you keep the fun going. I'm sure there's other cooler things you can be doing with it, but like I just imagine you're like sacrificing a bunch of stuff for value. Maybe you do some dockside loops. I don't know. Dockside Extortion is always brought up in like every single time there's a red card that is mentioned. So maybe not Dockside Extortion. Maybe something more interesting than that. But you do things. You like sacrifice a Solemn, right? You cast Solemn. You sacrifice it to like Crocline Ironworks or whatever, or like an Astronaut's Altar. You get a Solemn token. You double the ramp and double the card draw. You sacrifice that, you reanimate it, you do all those cool things. So it's like, it's sacrifice, it's cool. And you can also even go Spirit Tribal if you really wanted to. Also, the one I really like the most, you put this, it's a dwarf, right? So you put in the 99 of Depala, which is a vehicle dwarf deck. Then when your vehicles die, you sacrifice the vehicle, or it dies to a board wipe, whatever. Then you get a ghost vehicle. You get like a ghost train. How cool is that? You're beating down people with the ghost train.
That is
the ghost pirate
awesome.
ship.
Yeah, I love this card too. This one was in consideration for my top 5 list as well. I think this is, Wizards nailed it, I think, with Lorehold in this set and with Commander 2021. There's a couple of just really interesting new legends. Even something like Quintarius, one of the uncommon legends, is really neat. So I feel like they did a great job designing for Boros in Strixhaven. As far as Hofri itself, it's definitely a fun value commander where you just play stuff that sacks itself, play your Goblin Bombardment or whatever, get your stuff back with haste. The card even goes back into the graveyard eventually once it dies. I think the really scary way to build around this is probably to go like sneak attack route, where you have these effects that like can cheat big things into play and then they sacrifice at the end of your turn. So like Perforos, sneak attack, put your big like whatever, Titans, Eldrazi's, whatnot into play, smash someone, they die, they come back with haste and trample, even better. Also some cool shenanigans with like Evoke, like Revelark is a pretty interesting synergy that keeps coming back and sacrificing, like reanimates all the stuff in your graveyard that's cheap. Karmic Guide is another one. So there are endless shenanigans with this card. If it wasn't for Osgir in the Commander 2021 deck, this might be my favorite Boros commander of all time, but this is also high on the list, which I think speaks really highly of just Wizards' design of this set, that a couple of my all-time favorite Boros commanders are coming from the same set.
Yeah, it has so much potential, and I love like this focusing on the reanimation, but doing it in a very Borosy way just seems really, really fun. And yeah, I think they definitely nailed it. And like you said, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with it. I want to make ghost trains, so it has an appeal to everybody. So.
Yeah, and like Boros Spirits is kind of interesting as well. Like that's not really a traditional spirit color combination. So it's got Jank Tribal, it's got Tomer's Ghost Train plan. It's got more spiky, like sneak attack you to death type plan. So all around, Hot Reef seems like a pretty big win. Let's move on to another commander, which I really like. Number 3 on my list are Orzov slash whatever they call
Silver
Orzov
Quill.
in this set. Silver
the
Quill, I
name
think.
says-
Actually, it's in the. I was getting to the name. I was doing my little intro, and then I was going to read the name. I guess I should have done that first. Chadrick's Silver Quill. It is in the name. 5 mana, 2/5 Elder Dragon, flying double strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2, but each mode must target a different player. Target player makes a 2/1 Inkling token with flying. Target player draws a card, loses a life. Target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. So Chadrick Silver Quill is a card that I feel is very specifically designed for Commander, and I feel like it opens up a relatively new area for Orzov. This is like Orzov politics, even Orzov group hug you could go. And Orzov is very much not the most traditional colors for that type of commander. Like, yeah, it's really powerful. It's flying, it's double striking, it's giving you a good ability each turn, but you got to choose an opponent as well, which I think is what makes this card so fun. You can really use this to hopefully get political favors out of your opponents, try to trade them the token or the counters if they do something you want, or like, I'll let you draw a card if you kill this thing. So I just love cards like this. One of my favorite things in Commander are cards that impact multiple players and add that political element to the game. And I feel like this is one of the best commanders we've seen for doing that for a long time. And it's in a unique color combination for the political aspect. So I don't think this card is like super good. I just think it's going to be super fun and open up a new style of deck and a new color combination for Commander. But Tomer, what do you think about the new Elder Dragon?
I totally agree with you. One of my favorite archetypes that I like calling, I don't know if it even has an official term, but I've been calling it for many years, politics, where like it's not a group hug deck. You're not a group hug deck. You're basically trying to use cards and effects that benefit you and a specific opponent that you have control over. And you can use that as a bartering tool. You always come up on top when you're using that. And I think Chadrick Silver Quill kind of fits that archetype mentality to me, where you have full control over whether or not you're going to be benefiting or you're going to allow somebody to benefit off this, right? You can choose to, somebody who's, behind in the game, you can make a token and you can let them draw a card or whatever. Or you could be mean, and somebody who has no cards, no creatures on the battlefield, you can give them +1/+1 counters on nothing, and then you just get value out of it. But like, I like the idea, like you said, it's like getting favors, using this politically, always benefiting more from it. Like, you always get to choose whether or not you want to use it for one. You get to choose which one you're going to get the benefit from, what the benefit for your opponent is. But you can use it just savvily. Like, if there's an arch enemy at the table, you don't have to help them, right? You can help somebody who's a mutual opponent of that arch enemy, and work together on that. And each mode is always going to be relevant, right? Like, often you're going to be just drawing cards, but sometimes you want a blocker, or you want another body on the table. You put a token on the battlefield. Or if you have a bunch of tokens on the battlefield, you have a huge army, you're going to get a lot of value out of that +1/+1 counter that you put on everything. So I love the versatility here. Like you said, I don't think it's an incredibly powerful commander in terms of raw power, but I love this play style. I love the way the archetype it promotes. And I expect to be playing it a good deal, and I'm going to be jamming it in my political decks for sure. Also,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's off topic.
Tomer's also first. Oh, okay. I was just going to say, it works really well with the Silver Quill Precon from Commander 2021. When I first saw this card, this was spoiled before the Commander deck. And I was like, oh, it's really cool, but Orzov is like a weird political colors. Are there enough cards to really build like a sweet Silver Quill political deck in Commander? And then they dumped a ton of new like Orzov political cards in that deck. So there's a lot of sweet upgrades that are brand new. So you're going to get to play a lot of new cards if you build around Chadrick. But Tomer, let's rant
no,
time.
It's not rant. It's a
also.
praise time. It's a praise time. Kind of off topic,
Ooh,
but this features one of my favorite artworks in the entire set. Raymond Swanland did all of the Elder Dragons, I believe, and this one's one of my favorite pieces that he's done in recent memory. Raymond Swanland is like notorious for basically doing like movement kind of motion type of artworks, and his trademark, if you're looking at the actual artwork, is like these angular spikes. Like he conveys motion with these little spiky things. He adds spikes to all his artwork. All of his art. He's the spike master. And I absolutely love it. Like these little horizontal spikes. He's great at it. And I think just like everything that is trademark Raymond Swanling works really well with this piece. I kind of get that momentum of the dragon swooping by these the rooftops. I love like the spikes, and I love like the just the color tone of it. And this is the first time ever that I've seen a Magic the Gathering piece with lens flare on it, and I'm like, yes, lens flare, freaking amazing. He made lens flare in it, and it doesn't look cheap at all. It looks fantastic. When I added lens flare, I added for cheesiness, so it was like a cheap extra thing. But he added lens flare, and it looks so good. It looks so good. I love it. I'm so glad Raven Swallow got these pieces. He just nailed it. Mwah. Amazing.
Yeah, the art is really cool looking. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. So shout out to Raymond. But let's move on. We have another number 3. Tomer's number 3.
Hey.
Interesting.
Hey.
Cody Voracious Codex. Tomer, is this finally a fair 5-color commander? We've got a lot of busted ones recently. Is this the fair one, or is Cody somehow broken and I haven't realized it yet?
I think it can be broken. I think there are going to be some CDH lines with Cody, but I'm not interested for it. I think so to answer your question, I think Cody is the first 5-color commander in a while where you can actually build it. If you're not building it in a busted way, it's going to be a fair commander. Unlike Golos, where you have to try really hard for Golos not to be overpowered. You have to go like full Big Lebowski on it, right? Like if you just pick like scouts or whatever, you'll still overwhelm the table. It's very difficult for Golos and like Kenrith, for example, to not be like overwhelmingly value engines. But Cody, I think, is actually nails it. Like if you build a jankier version of Cody, it's going to be a janky deck. So Cody is a 3-mana 1/4 legendary artifact creature construct. It's an animated book, which I just find just very amusing. You can't cast permanent spells, so it comes with a massive drawback. You can't cast permanent spells while Cody's on the battlefield. Then it has a powerful activate ability. You can pay 4 and tap it to add Wooburg, so you go up a mana. And when you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is basically like Cascade for instants or sorceries. So like spell cast, I don't know, instant or sorcery. Cast Slinger. Cascade Linger. I don't know how to. Leave a comment section on what you want to call this. So it's Cascade for instants and sorceries only. The only things you get is instant or sorcery outfit. I think it's a really cool thing. It's not very busted. Like, there's a lot of, you could probably like untap Cody, make infinite mana somehow, but I think you have to work for it a little bit. Like all by itself, like just cascading into one spell each time, not particularly insane. Like you can, I think maybe like the craziest thing you could do is maybe like fill your graveyard full of creatures or whatever, cast a 1-mana spell and cascade into like a Living End or something like that. Maybe a Hypergenesis. Maybe one of those angles can be good. But if you don't have those in the deck, I don't think you're going to be doing really insane things with it, like as insane as like say Golos. And also the drawback is really cool. I actually really like this drawback because first of all, I like building around drawbacks. I think those add a lot, even though they are like a negative. They're actually a very big positive to me. And you can use this to your advantage. There's 2 ways that I came up with. Assault Suit. You can equip Cody with Assault Suit. You cast Assault Suit, then you cast Cody, equip the Assault Suit onto Cody. Then at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they get in control of Cody, and they can cast permanents. Or you can Fractured Identity Cody. So you can cast Cody, cast Fractured Identity on Cody, exiling it, and then giving each opponent a copy of Cody. Then they can never cast another instant or sorcery, they can't cast another permanent spell unless they get rid of Cody. They still get Cody, so they can get use out of it, obviously, but I mean, if you throw this to a creature deck or you throw this to like an Animar deck, they're like, buh. It's not good. It's not a fair trade. So I think I like it. I really like it a lot. It's an animated book. I mean, that's adorable. What do you think?
Yeah, it is definitely adorable. And I think the idea of giving your opponent Cody's, be it with harmless offerings or fractured identities or assault suits, I think that's absolutely hilarious. One of the first commanders ever, maybe, where giving it to your opponent is actually beneficial to you a lot of the time. As far as its power level, I think it's pretty fair. Like, I think it's fun and a cool, like, 5-color Spellslinger commander, but this is not a Kenrith or a Golos or something. And I think that's a good thing for multiple reasons. Like, it's a good thing because the 5-color commanders recently have probably been a little bit too busted. Also a good thing because if you want to play a 5-color deck, I think you can play Cody and not get immediately murdered by the rest of the table, unlike revealing a Golos or a Kenrith or something where people know how powerful they are. I think people kind of look at Cody as a little bit of a meme. So I don't think you're going to draw the hate. I think it's going to be like, oh, isn't that cute? Look at the little book. So I think that's actually an upside. Although, as you mentioned, the no mana cost instants and sorceries are probably like the most busted thing you can do. Being able to put those in your deck. Yeah, restore balances and living ends and things like that. Hypergenesis. But even that, I don't know. Is that like broken? Probably not like broken. It's powerful and can definitely be powerful, but it doesn't really scare me the way a Golos does. So I like it. I think it's definitely a cute design. It definitely can be powerful. It leads to some interesting play patterns where maybe you want to try to give it to your opponent, and it's a 5-color commander that's not just going to get you killed.
Totally agree.
Let's move on to number 2 on my list. We have another MDFC, Augmenter Pugilist, and also Echoing Equation. Front half, ignore. I don't care about the Troll Druid. Not all that interesting. The back half of the MDFC, Echoing Equation, 5 mana sorcery. Choose target creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of it until end of turn, except those creatures aren't legendary if the chosen creature is legendary. So this card I love. It's kind of like a Mirror Weave, but it works so much better in Commander, because in Commander, there's a lot of legends, and Wizards is printing more and more legends each set. That's been something I've run into with Reflections of Lajara in Commander, is it looks like it should be busted, but there's so many legends in a lot of decks, it's less powerful than it is. So this actually gets around the legendary problem. And I think this card is just super fun. You can try to pull off like the Biovisionary win is one shenanigan. It's really sweet with like Etrata. Like Etrata is maybe my favorite thing. You'd have to play them both in the 99, but like making a bunch of Etratas and attacking and exiling everything and winning on the spot. So I just think this card, it's just fun. Like Mirror Weave is a card that I've wanted to play in a lot of different decks, but the fact that it doesn't work well with Legends has kept it out of a lot of my decks. This is like an Echoing Equation that actually works or Echoing Equation is like a Mirror Weave, but one that actually works in Commander. But Tomer, what do you think?
I think you nailed it. I think this card is just like, it's the Mirror Weave that works in Commander. That's its main shtick. It's banned colors, so I mean, sorry, it's Simic colors, or it's Quandrix colors. That's the one, Quandrix. It's Quandrix colors. So I mean, there is you can't just jam it into any blue deck, but I think it's pretty easy to get a lot of value out of this. Like we just covered Adrix, and you just you make a bunch of Adrix copies. It's a token deck, so you're gonna have a bunch of tokens on the battlefield. Make a bunch of Adrix copies, and you play like, I don't know, Avengers Zendikar or whatever, and then you make like a bajillion Adventures of Zendikar or whatever, and just it looks like a ton of fun. And I mean, having an 8/8 Trampler for 3 on one side, sometimes you just need it, you know? Sometimes you have an empty board and you're facing lethal. Never.
Not, I will die before I cast the front half of this card. I got to stand by my principles
there's
on that one. I
wish
it was mono blue.
He has no blocks.
No, Echoing Equation. Copy my Muldrifter. Die. All right, let's move on to Tomer's number 2 card, staying with Simic/Quandrix, a card that might be a bit of a sleeper. I think people are waking up to Decisive Denial. Not the flashiest card, just 2 mana, instant speed, fight something, or negate something Mana Leak style. Counter a non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. Tomer, what do you think about this one?
I think this is like a card. I don't want to say staple, because every single time I say a staple, people's jimmies get very rustled. And I'll say this is a card that I will highly prioritize in most Simic decks that I would build. And I would highly suggest you consider this in any Simic deck that you build. How about that? Not staple. Not saying a staple. Don't give me bad comments. Not a staple. Just something that I would highly recommend. Okay, high recommendation. Decisive Denial. Both effects of these are very good. Like, you have on one end, you have creature removal. If you're in Simic, you probably have creatures on the battlefield. They're probably going to be big enough to kill at least utility creatures, right? Something smaller than it, like an Oracleable Die or whatever. Something that you need gone. And the other side, counter target non-creature spell unless its control pays 3. A lot of people consider like a mana leak effect or something in Commander because it's like, oh, well, what if my opponent has a bajillion mana in the late game? Well, first of all, how about you just run removal to remove that Zendikar Resurgence, step 1. Step 2 is this card doesn't have to be fantastic in every single mode, like on turn 15 of the Commander game. Like, I think I've gotten value out of like Spell Piercing someone, even in turn 11, I've gotten value out of Spell Piercing a critical card, like a board wipe, or like somebody dropping just a game-winning overrun effect, like that. Like, paying 3 is not something that every single deck can just randomly do. Like, if your opponent has like 50 mana and like is going off of Smothering Tithe or Zendikar Resurgent or Mirari's Wake, the problem is that card, not the fact that this card doesn't counter it in that regard. You just need to find removal for that thing. Rant aside, though, I think both modes are incredibly powerful, incredibly useful in many, many situations, and having both on the same card for 2 mana is like incredible. It makes it one of the best removal spells, I think, in Simic. I just see it like being jammed into basically any deck, and sometimes you want to fight a creature, sometimes you want to counter a spell. All the time is going to be really, really good and really, really useful to you. So Decisive Denial, even though it's not flashy, it's not a legendary creature, it's not like a big effect that, Commander players will swoon over, I think it's just like this key card that most decks are going to love. So yeah, real good.
It's a staple. I will say it's a staple. And
No,
if that rustles some jimmies, that's fine. Think of it this way. Right now, the number 1 most played commander in Simic, according to EDH Rec, is Tetyova. If you look at instants that are played in Tetyova, number 1, negate. This is almost a negate. And then number 5, reality shift. This gives you the removal of reality shift and the countering of negate all in one card. And you know what that means? That means you can actually have another slot in your deck potentially where you can play this instead of other things and play another. Yeah, they can fit in another card draw spell. You can fit in another cultivate to draw cards with your Tetyova or whatever. You can get Jazzy in there. That makes room for Jazzy. If you're playing a deck of these colors, it would take a lot for me to not play this. I guess if you have like no creatures and fighting doesn't do anything, then you might as well play negate or whatever. But I think a huge percentage of decks that are in these colors, you just play this because it's really good. And the flexibility makes up for whatever issues there are with a mana leak instead of a hard negate on the counter spell side. So I think this is a new Simic staple that you should play in pretty much every single deck.
I would also like the record to show I do not condone taking out 2 removal spots for Decisive Denial. I would go 1-for-1 trade, and every deck should run at least, I would say, 8, I would hope 8 to 10 targeted interaction, targeted removal, and then like 2 board wipes on top of that. Do not be like Decisive Denial is both negate and prey upon or whatever, so I'm going to remove both ghost cards and put in one. I feel like that is a bad decision. But a decisive decision would be decisively.
Card draw, Tomer.
No, I would decisively put this in all of my Simic decks. But it's not a staple because we don't say that word. That is the bad word.
Well, let's move on to our first number 1 card, which definitely not a staple, but I do love this card a whole lot, and that is Black's Vexing Pest. And Oh my goodness. There are multiple reasons that I love this card. For one thing, Blex is a MDFC. The backside of it is Golgari. Search for Blex. And the backside, it draws you cards, and you can play it in your command zone. It's 4 mana. Sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put any number in your hand. You lose 3 life for each that you put in your hand. Sure, whatever. We're playing Commander. I got 40 life. I can take it. The rest go in the graveyard. It's a draw 5 for 4 in my command zone that I can cast again and again and again. What could possibly be better than that? So that's number 1. Number 2, Blex is a really cool card. Blex gives a commander to a bunch of different tribes that don't really have a commander. We have pests, a new thing from Strixhaven. Bats, I don't know why you want to be green-black for bats. Bats are mostly black, but still, this is a legendary bat, or works with a bat deck. Insects, if you want to go insect tribal. Snakes has a lot of legends, but not really in green and black. Spiders gives you another option if you want to build spider tribal. So I love that this is a janky tribe commander for a ton of different tribes. Some of them either lacking a good commander altogether or lacking a commander in these colors. And the backside draws cards from the command zone. That's like heaven. Tomer, what do you think about Blex?
You found a commander that will finally make you cast it. Maybe not for its creature side,
yes,
but at least for the other side. I think it's fine. I don't know. The backside is basically the Moonlight Bargain, except it's sorcery speed and costs 1 less, which is much better. You pay 1 more life for each card, but I think it's still worth it. I mean, I would still take the cheaper sorcery version over the 1 mana more. So I like it. I like this in command zone. You don't have to jump through any hoops for it. Like, obviously it works well with graveyard strategies because you can use it to just fill your graveyard, essentially like mill 5 and you choose to keep whatever cards you want. The other side is, I mean, I'm happy for people who are like pest tribal or bat tribal or insect tribal or whatever. I don't know. It's not for me. I like the artwork. I like the story that it tells on both sides. Like, I like the artwork. I like how the flavor text connects both sides on it. That's cute, but like, I look at it, I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna play it, but I'm happy for you. Happy for you, Seth.
I don't think it's a good commander for the most part, especially the tribal aspects. I don't think it's like super powerful, but I like the flavor of it, and I like Jink tribes getting support. That's one thing I want to see more and more in sets, and I feel like Wizards has been doing more and more of, is like powering up the janky fringe things a little bit compared to just printing more Tetyovas and like busted stuff. And I think Blex fits really well there. Is this a strong commander? No, but it's unique. It references a lot of tribes that could use a little bit of love. And the flavor is a little bit of a fail. Like, you can't really ever find your Blex with the backside in Commander, which is a little bit of a favorite flail, but I'm going to keep trying. Like, every single turn, drawing 5.
He's missing, Seth. That's the point. You can't find him.
But I will keep trying and drawing 5 every turn until I brutally die. I do like that once you get too low on life from drawing cards, you can play the front side and sacrifice it to get a little bit of life back so you can draw more cards to do it again.
Yeah, I like it. It's cute.
All right, let's move on to Tomer's number 1 card, Strict Proctor, a 2-mana 1/3 that stops triggers, essentially. Tomer, tell us about this one.
All right, so this is my favorite card out of the Strixhaven set. Strict Proctor is a 2-mana white creature, 1/3 Spirit Cleric with flying. I don't know how it flies. Like, if you're looking at the artwork, it's clearly standing, unless like its little feet are like kind of levitating over the ground. But like, you can see it standing. Yeah. It's like at the same height as the people in the background. Why does it? Come on, just make it float or so. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, gripe aside, whenever a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. So you know what this really immediately reminds me of, Seth?
What is that?
Panharmonicon.
It's the opposite of Panharmonicon.
Yeah, if you have a pesky Panharmonicon player at the table, you'll be like, oh, I guess I'll just read Strict Proctor. Will you like to pay the 2 every single time? You blink, Seth. Would you like to?
You know how I feel about paying the 1 or paying the 2, Tomer. That's so not not nice. I will say I was very disappointed because Mark Rosewater spoiled in his little like leak thing he does half of the text, and it was the when a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, and then he cut it off there. I was like, oh, they're gonna give me a new take on Panharmonicon. This is gonna be great. And then it was actually like the hard counter to everything I love in life.
Yeah, and it stops not just Panharmonicon, it stops a bunch of things, just randomly hosing a lot of different strategies, which I really like. Like, a lot of the most common cards usually have a triggered ability when something enters the battlefield. Either it's like landfall, or it's like, something that has a powerful enter the battlefield trigger, like Mull Drifter, or whatever does a thing, whatever does a thing, Strict Proctor shuts it down. But what I really like about it is that you can actually build around it in various ways. So you can actually have a deck there where this negative effect actually helps you, and you choose to just counter a negative trigger that has a drawback. And the one that I like the most is Lotus Field. Is it Lotus Field or Lotus Veil? It's Lotus Field. I think it's that one. So yep. Lotus Field, when it enters the battlefield, this is a land that enters the battlefield tapped, but it taps for 3 mana of any color, and it has hexproof, but it comes with a drawback. The drawback is when it enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice 2 other lands. So you're not actually going up in mana with it by itself. It's basically 3 lanes in one, and you have to sacrifice the other 2, but it has hexproof and everything, so there is an upside to it. And if you have any ways to untap it or whatever, there's definitely upsides that you can build around. And Strict Proctor is another way you can actually build around it, where you play Lotus Field, and if Strict Proctor is on the battlefield, you can just choose to counter that drawback of sacrificing 2 things by just choosing not to pay 2. It also works with the bounce lands too, like Boros Garrison, for example. Boros Garrison requires you to bounce a land back to your hand, so it's like a tempo loss, kind of like that. But now it's like straight ramp. Like, the bounce lands are straight ramp, the Lotus Field is straight ramp, and you get to ruin your opponent's hopes and dreams at the same time. So it's just great. It's like white ramp plus making people sad. How does it get any better than that? I just love this card. It's so good.
I will say, even though I really hate what this does against Panharmonicon decks in specific, in all honesty, there's a lot of cards already that have done that. We've had Hushbringers, for example, Tecatli Honor Guard. There's quite a few like shutdown creatures enter the battlefield triggers cards. So yeah, it is another card that hurts on Panharmonicon. But the fact that this triggers on any non-land or any permanent, including lands, is huge. That's what sets it apart. And it actually makes me like this card. Like, even though I know it's going to hurt one of my favorite archetypes, those synergies you were talking about are really cool with like lands that sacrifice. There's also some creatures that have like negative enter the battlefield triggers that make you sacrifice stuff. Phyrexian Dreadnought, for example, Clackbridge Troll, giving your opponents tokens. So you definitely can like build around this effect if you want to. And I think that's actually like really sweet. So even though this card hates on my favorite playstyle, I think there's enough cool, unique aspects of it that I am excited to try to like build around this card and see what it can do.
Yeah, it's not just a hate bear where everybody's hurt. This is one where it's like, it actually benefits you if you build around it. And then you also hate on your opponents too at the same time, which is just like a cherry on top, honestly. Like, I see this as more like, I'm going to build around it, and I'm going to hate out my opponents as a nice upside. But I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like it too, as strange as that sounds. So, I believe that brings us to the end of our top 10/top 5 commander cards from Strixhaven. So, Tomer, any last thoughts on the way out the door today on Strixhaven, commander, anything?
A lot of really good cards. Oh, shout out to Gyomi, Master Chef, which actually probably would have been my number 1 choice. But we kind of did the list before the Witherbloom thing came out, and I kind of just threw some Witherbloom cards in at the last moment. But Gyomi, Master Chef, is actually the commander that I'm the most hyped to build around Food Tribal. So shout out to Gyomi. If people were confused why it wasn't on the list, it was because I just forgot to add him after the fact. But Gyomi definitely is the one that I'm most excited for. Food Tribal, come on now. But yeah, I really like the set, and I love Commander 2021 as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the set's super sweet. The only thing I would say, one thing you probably noticed not on the list, no Deans. And
No Deans.
the Deans are a little bit awkward for Commander, which is just, it's a little weird to me with the focus on Commander that they'd have like one of their biggest mechanics and their biggest cycle of legendary creatures just be like really awkward for the format. So that might be a bit of a miss, but even counting Deans as a miss, the set's really sweet, and it's got cool stuff, it's got unique stuff, it's got fun commanders, it build around, so I really like this set as well too. So you've seen what we like from the set, everyone. Now let us know what you like. What card are you most excited to build around? What new legend, what college are you, I guess, or whatever they're doing with the color combination. So let us know that in the comments as well. Tomer, thanks for hanging out. It's always a blast to do these videos.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for watching. So again, let us know what you think about Strixhaven in Commander in the comments. And yeah, until next set, this is the crew signing out.
Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.